Iron Fist is worse than MacGyver.
Wait, you said that MacGyver was one of the worst television shows you've ever seen.
I did say that.
But hold on. I thought Iron Fist was old. I thought you watched it like a year and a half ago.
There's a second season.
Oh, great.
Now, to be fair to MacGyver, which, first off, I can't believe I'm saying the words MacGyver in a pejorative sense. That still rattles me. But to be fair to that horrible show, at the time, I think I was saying it was the worst television show I had ever seen. And thinking back...
Now, hold on a minute. Hold on. This was after having seen the first season of Iron Fist.
Yes.
Yes? So, the second season of Iron Fist is so significantly worse than the first season, which you didn't praise very much to me. So it like went downhill that fast?
Okay, so what I was going to say was that MacGyver might have actually been a little bit better than the original Iron Fist series.
Really?
Yes. Might
Okay.
have. I mean, at the time, when we talked about MacGyver, I had only seen one episode. I ended up watching the whole thing,
Yeah.
and it does not get good, but it turns into a standardized television show relatively quickly. And
Okay.
if you pretend that he's not MacGyver, which is easy to do because he's nothing like MacGyver, then you can bump it up a few notches and just say, okay, it's just a crappy crime spy television show.
So the point that you're making, if I understand correctly, is that MacGyver is only bad because, or not only, but MacGyver is really bad because it's called MacGyver and not like Spyman.
Yeah.
Whereas Iron Fist is genuinely bad with no shadow that it stands under.
Yeah, Iron Fist is trying to be Iron Fist, and okay, so I'm always in a unique position to talk about these superhero shows, because everyone else that talks about them seems to have some background in what's going on with the comic books and everything. And as you know, I'm more prone to reading books or watching movies than I am to reading comic books.
Sure.
So I knew nothing about Iron Fist other than he was supposed to be a kung fu superhero with super fists that he got from some thing, some temple city. And that was it. Nothing really more than that. The only other thing that I knew about at the time was this supposed symbiosis between him and Power Man, because I've been told about it by other people.
Hold on. There's a hero called Power Man.
Yeah, he's there. That's another one of the Netflix Marvel shows. Luke Cage. His superhero name is Power Man.
I thought Luke Cage was just Luke Cage.
Well, it's kind of funny because they're so desperate to bring the television shows down to earth from the whole superhero thing that they dance around the fact that they are superheroes constantly in the shows. So there's 2 or 3 mentions of someone calling Luke Cage Power Man in the first season of the show, and he's shaking his head and telling people not to call him that.
Okay.
It just comes off as kind of backhanded. You're not. We know who he is as people that are consuming the show.
No, it's not that. It's not that at all. It's that Power Man is a horrible, horrible name. Whereas Luke Cage is actually a reasonable name and doesn't make me cringe every time I say it.
Yes, but we know at some point he's going to be Power Man. That's just how it is.
No. They can just write out that name entirely, or have it be the name that supervillains call him to rile him up. He should never call himself Power Man. To do so would indicate that he has no self-respect.
But if that's what they wanted to do, then they shouldn't have brought it up in the first place.
Like I said, it can be something the bad guys call him to rile him up. No one who respects him should call him Power Man.
Fair enough, but that doesn't change how they dance around everything else in the show. I mean, I can list off a dozen things. Like first off, the costumes alone. So they spend the entire first season of Daredevil dancing around the fact that he becomes a costume superhero, and when he finally does, the costume is actually worse than the the startup vigilante costume he's been using since the beginning of the show. So, I mean, if they wanted to go that route where they weren't going to fully flesh out the superheroes as, comic superheroes. They should have just left that out entirely because they were doing just fine before that. And that is... Daredevil is the only one that I am legitimately going to say was an excellent show. The rest of them, even the ones that I thought were pretty good, just they were kind of cookie cutter things. Like, I've seen stuff like The Punisher, I've seen stuff like Jessica Jones, and well, no, I haven't really seen stuff like Jessica Jones. Jessica Jones tried to be something that was so unappealingly different by the time it rolled around to the second season that they didn't actually know what the bad guys should be. And that seems to be a problem with all of the shows lately, is like they don't want to commit bad guys to being bad guys at all. And it's not one of those things where it's like 1 minute they're bad and 1 minute they're good. It's more like you have a character that's a complete bad guy in Luke Cage, but the hero keeps jumping back and forth with knowing that this is a bad guy, but like everything that happens, he has to second guess himself on whether or not he should treat this person like a bad guy. And it's kind of, it's very waffly. Like you don't expect heroes to be so weak and vulnerable at every turn to where they can't get their job done. Like they cease to be a hero at that point, and they just become Joe selling hot dogs on the side of the road and going through his daily life and trying to decide what he should interfere with and what he shouldn't. There's you lose all sense of here is someone that is going to be there for other people when they need him.
Right.
But Iron Fist takes everything to a whole new level.
Yeah.
And like, you can't really talk about one of the shows without talking about the others, because they have butchered the idea of storytelling to the point where...
Hold on. You can't talk about one without talking about the others, except the ones that have been deliberately removed from the continuity that you're talking about.
Are there ones that have...
We had this conversation about the movie.
The movie?
Yeah, the Superman Batman movie and the Flash appearing in it, and I was like, oh, it's the Flash from the TV show, right? And it's like, no.
Okay, so it's actually a little bit worse than that. The Netflix universe is entirely removed from... No, you're mixing me up here. I was going to say that it's removed from the TV universe, but that's not the case. The DC and Marvel are operating two different ways. It's DC that's doing the whole, movie franchise doesn't intercombine.
This is a Marvel character.
Yeah, these are Marvel characters.
Oh yeah, show us how much I know.
They're the B Squad. They're basically the Avengers B Squad, the Defenders.
The second string.
Yeah, the Defenders plus Punisher. And I don't even know if I'm right about that, because for all I know about Marvel Comics, the Punisher was one of the Defenders before. Who knows? But it certainly isn't me. But they reference, like, the movie that strangely gets referenced the most out of all of these is the first two Avengers movies are constantly being referenced in the shows, because they're always talking about Sokovia or whatever it was called from the second movie, and they're always making references to portals opening up over New York in the first movie. So they are consistent with the universe, but they have pretty much nothing to do with it. And I'm vaguely certain that there's no plans that have been discussed to really combine the two in either way. Like, you're not going to see Daredevil in the next in Captain Marvel, basically. Which is a bit of a pity, because Daredevil is probably the only character out of the television characters that I really genuinely like. Like, the first season of Jessica Jones was tolerable in that it had a great villain, and there was, actual conflict for a start. Like, you're just not going to believe how bad Iron Fist gets when we get rolling here, but Jessica Jones herself doesn't develop too much as a character, and by the beginning of the second season, she's kind of relapsed as a result of, I'm guessing, what happened in the Defenders, but I'm not even sure if I have them in the right order, because I don't think any of it matters. The shows got so bad that I was just watching them. What's the term? Hate watching.
Uh-huh.
Kind of like how I got through all of Game of Thrones, which we're not getting into that mess. There's so much going on at this point in the Defenders shows that I don't think even the comic books would be able to follow along and build off of anything. Defenders was so bad, I couldn't actually understand what was going on and why the things that were happening even had to happen.
Uh-huh.
But I know that it culminated in the Defenders having to blow up a building in New York, so take from that what you will.
Yeah.
I wonder if it unironically aired on September 11th. That would... Oh, but this is... Okay, so... We never talked about the first Iron Fist, did we?
No, we did not.
Alright, from what I remember, just to get through it real quick... And it was easily the worst show out of all of them. Like Daredevil was great.
Uh-huh.
Jessica Jones was okay, mostly because the villain was excellent. Luke Cage was, it didn't really have a great villain, but it had a lot of supporting villains that were good. And they kept interchanging villains, which kind of knocked it down a few pegs because it didn't really give you a clear idea of what is he being a hero of at this point. By the end of it, there was just, it was kind of like, here's a bad guy out of nowhere, and now we're going to conclude with a fight scene with a bad guy that really didn't even need to happen. But it was watchable. Then so Iron Fist came after that, I believe. Either that or the second season of Daredevil. Mm-hmm. Second season of Daredevil, not as good as the first. Probably better than a lot of the other stuff. But we're not here to talk about that. So we get to Iron Fist, and Iron Fist was the one I was waiting for.
Sure.
It's right up my alley. It's a kung fu superhero. And since they announced that they were going to do a Defenders movie... I talked to Sean for a while. Sean and Ramon are my go-to guys when it comes to comics. And when they first did Daredevil, I was like, that's pretty cool. Are they going to do more stuff with that? And Sean tells me, yeah, they're going to do the Defenders. They're talking about doing all of them. I said, well, who's that? And he mentioned, Power Man, Iron Fist, Jessica Jones. I didn't know who Power Man or Jessica Jones were, but I'd heard of Iron Fist. Just because, kung fu, Justin, what can I say? I was plowing through the other ones, like, okay, these ones, it's kind of like tapering off here, but then we're going to have this kung fu one, and even if it's not that great, at least I'll be watching a show with, like, some awesome kung fu in it.
Uh-huh.
Never happened.
Huh.
Never even came close. They picked a guy that couldn't fight to save his life. They like, I'm dying. I'm watching the show, and it gets to this episode where he's in a dojo with his shirt off training, and I'm like, how am I supposed to take this seriously if this is the visual they're giving me? This guy is a 98-pound weakling, no muscle to speak of on his body.
But that's the whole. Is that the whole point of him being Iron Fist? Is that he?
No, he trained at a temple with monks and had to fight his way to the top and become the best fighter in the world in order to earn the Iron Fist. And then you see him, and it's like I'm really stretching here to suspend my disbelief. But like, they start with an I don't even remember when the first episode was where he actually used the Iron Fist. I think they were 4 episodes in before he did it. And this wasn't one of those origin shows where, they're building up to him getting the Iron Fist and then they're going to show him using it. He has it from the moment the show starts.
Wait, so really?
And he actively is not using it for the first 3 episodes. There's like no fight scenes to speak of. And then like I started to take it as a personal affront to myself, because then they went out of their way to take this character and put him in a mental hospital for like 2 episodes. They basically tied him up so he couldn't do anything for 2 episodes, and kept doing all these flashbacks and jumping to other characters. And I'm like, wait, when do I get to see the Kung Fu guy? Show me the Kung Fu guy.
It's not his show.
It's really not. Like I mean, you can joke about that, but it I haven't gotten to the second season yet, and that's where it all spirals out of control. That's where I knew that Marvel's Netflix run was done. And people can disagree with me if they want, but they're wrong, and the reasons are many. There's no cohesion. It's not even a lack of cohesion. There is no attempt that I see in any of this for anyone to structure a story together. So now you've got this guy. He's locked down in a hospital. He finally gets out of this mental hospital. It was like there's these side characters, a brother and a sister, who run the Rand Corporation. And so when the Iron Fist comes back, he's Danny Rand. He is the inheritor of the Rand Corporation.
Yeah.
And he comes back and he tells them outright he's not really interested in running the company, and he doesn't want to take anything away from them, and everything's fine. And so immediately the brother and sister decide to start actively plotting against him. It's like there's no motivation for this anywhere. He just told you he doesn't care. and he sounds crazy too, because he's going around the whole time, like 12 times in the series. He's just going up to people and talking to people he doesn't even know and telling them that he's the immortal Iron Fist, the sworn defender of Kunlun, or whatever the city is called, and like everyone just sort of looking at him like he's crazy. It's no surprise he ended up in the mental institute, but it was like it was all unnecessary. And then the bad guys increasingly in these television shows are like hidden in the background and not actively participating in anything that's happening until the very end. And it's even worse in Iron Fist, because the bad guy of the first season is he's basically hiding from a bigger bad guy that is exercising power and influence over the city, but you're supposed to buy that he's the bad guy for that season, and he's the one that everyone's having a conflict with. And he's like cowering in a tower somewhere and not actually doing anything. And then it's like they have the Iron Fist track down some people. He's playing detective, so it's no longer a kung fu show. Now it's like it's like the Agatha Christie version of the Green Hornet. And he picks up this like sidekick character who is a member of the organization which he is sworn to fight, but he's just like, whatever. And now they're actively working together to bring down the Hand, which is the Iron Fist's sworn enemy. And she's a member of them, but she's been brainwashed somehow. It doesn't make any sense, because it's like she didn't know that they were doing bad stuff, but yet somehow she had assassin training and all this other stuff. So it's like, and I might be remembering it wrong, because there was no way I was watching it more than once. But it seemed to me that she had a lot of training to be able to do a lot of very convenient things when it came down to it, and yet as the series went on, more and more, she was like having an eye-opening experience to, this organization is actually a bunch of really bad people, and they're doing awful things in the shadows, and now I have to fight them. And I don't know if it was as bad as this in the first one, but like they couldn't give a lot of fight scenes to the Iron Fist because the guy couldn't fight, and since they were doing the whole non-costume thing, he wasn't like putting on the Iron Man suit and mask, so they couldn't even get a stunt double without making it look ridiculous. And it wasn't even just a case of the Iron Fist not being able to fight. Like a lot of the bad guys in a lot of the fight scenes, nobody in these scenes could really fight. The choreography was atrocious. And then, the lead character, his entire modus operandi in these fights is to throw a hook punch like he's a boxer every once in a while, maybe kick someone, and then after he pushes someone away, he strikes a pose, invariably, every time, some kung fu pose, and it's just so awkward. It's like watching people, it's like watching novices practicing karate in a dojo after their first month. It's like they do a lot of things for beginners where they have you maybe do a hip throw and throw someone to the ground, and then do a shout as you punch them and draw your fist back, and then everyone invariably looks like they're holding that pose for a second because that's what they've practiced over and over. So they stop in that position. There's no real flow there, and that's fine if you're practicing and if you're a beginner. But he's doing that when we're supposed to be taking him seriously as the greatest fighter in the world, and you just can't put together a fight scene with this guy. You can't have any of the bad guys be taken seriously when they're having trouble fighting him.
So I'm just trying to wrap my brain around this. They made a show that revolved around kung fu, and they didn't hire anybody who was a martial artist?
No, they did. They had one guy that I could see in the entire show. They hired some... I'm guessing that he's some kung fu guy. I'd never heard of him before, but he was some Chinese guy that... So you know how there was that whole thing where people were like, oh, they should have gotten an Asian guy to play Danny Rand, and...
Yeah.
Well, okay, putting that bunch of garbage aside, they had a guy who everyone said should have been the Iron Fist. And frankly, I don't care if he had been or not. In fact, I wish he would have been, because it would have been so much better. But I understand why they wanted to go with a character that looked like this guy, because he looks a lot, according to what I've heard, he looks a lot like the Iron Fist. That's what I heard when people were talking about it. Like, the guy they chose had like the curly blonde hair and everything that the Iron Fist has, and and he was, I guess he was a soap opera actor or something, which we'll get into that when we start talking about the second one too. But they went with him for a reason. People didn't like the reason, but it didn't really... There was a problem with them going with an Asian actor from the outset, because I guess the whole point, according to what Sean told me, of Iron Fist was that he was an outsider that made it to the top at this temple, and nobody thought he could, and he had to go up against, everyone was basically biased against him because he wasn't Asian like they were, or he was an outsider, he was from another country, all this other stuff, and so they could have cast an Asian and just like ignored that part of the story, but that was kind of what he talked about for a bit when he talked about Kung Lung during the show. So I guess that wouldn't have worked out so well. I don't know. The important thing is they had this one guy that could do kung fu, and he had a fight scene with Iron Fist that could have been an excellent fight scene if only the good guy could have been choreographed at all. Because this guy.
So you can't make a movie. You can't make a kung fu movie with only one guy who knows kung fu. I'm just gonna say that.
Well, they made an entire series twice, so
it's not. But then it's bad, and of course that's the point you're at pains to make. But I'm just saying, like,
I want.
Okay, so like, I mean, I'm not a huge kung fu fan, not nearly as much as you, but I've seen enough movies to know that you need to have at least two people who are capable of performing the choreography that you want to show.
It's not even that, because if you have someone who can't fight, but you need them to do the scene, you just have to teach them enough to do the scene, and that's not incredibly hard to do. It would have been acceptable if they would have spent more time with a guy who doesn't know anything about fighting and put together coherent fight scenes that, were just using camera effects and positioning and just a handful of really impressive moves that anyone could learn for the sake of just doing a bit of choreography. He doesn't have to be good at it. They just have to make it look good on camera against someone else who actually knows what they're doing. That can work out just fine, but they did not take the time to do that. You can tell when you're watching these fight scenes that there had to have been some kind of rush to putting it together, because there's nothing to show that they had worked on him making it look good at all. And they've got this other guy who's good at what he's doing, and it was like the only thing that struck a note with me as I was watching it, because at one point he starts to do some drunken fist boxing, which I'm a nut for that. Drunken Fist or Drunken Master, favorite kung fu movie, but
Yeah.
but he's actually fighting using that style, and I'm like, oh, this could have been such an amazing fight scene if they would have put just a little bit more effort on the part of the hero into this. They never did it, and I'm watching the whole show, and I'm just like, they gotta do something with this guy, and it started to become a joke. Like in the show, I felt like they were purposely just not caring. All the way up, and I know I want to talk about the second season more than anything, because I didn't think that they could make it worse than the first season. And it got so much worse. But there were a couple of other fight scenes where he's like fighting a whole bunch of members of the Hand, and it looks like a bunch of frogs just flopping around. Like if you threw a bucket of frogs up into the air, and then like after they landed, see what they all did and film that, and that's your fight scene. Because he's like, he's doing like such tropey fighting stuff. Like someone runs up behind him, and without looking, he backhands them with his fist, but he freezes for like a whole second. I'm just like, someone throw something at him. He's not moving. he clearly can't fight more than one person at a time.
Clearly.
And also in these fight scenes, this is the best part. So like 4 fight scenes I think go by, and he never once uses the Iron Fist.
Why not?
Is
there a good reason?
I guess he can't control it enough to not kill someone if he does it, but that's like me writing that. That's not what they said. It's just he's not using it. I think you can count on one hand the number of times you actually see him use the Iron Fist in Iron Fist. I think it's like 4 or 5 times. Certainly only 4 or 5 times for actual combat. Like, the majority of it is him just hitting things that you normally wouldn't be able to break. So he's using his power more like Superman than like a kung fu superhero. It's just like, I gotta bust through a door now. and then, like, at the height of me wondering when they were going to have him use the Iron Fist, they do this thing where he's like, oh, my chi's not focused. I can't seem to use the Iron Fist for some reason now. I'm just like, are you kidding me? You haven't used it yet?
No, now's just not the time. It's just not. I'm not feeling it.
It's like, who was the guy that woke up in bed shouting, "The bank is trying to kill me"? Who was that? Do you remember?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
It was like Jefferson or Hamilton or some like someone back in the days of like the First National Bank. He had problems with it, and he woke up sick in bed, and he like jumped up screaming, and he just goes, "The bank is trying to kill me," and it's just like this.
That sounds like Jefferson.
It might have been. I think it was later than Jefferson, though. I'm not sure. It doesn't matter.
Jackson?
It doesn't.
Andrew Jackson?
No, probably earlier. I don't know.
So the
important thing
Americans that I know of that had really big conflicts with a national bank would have been Jefferson and Jackson.
Then it was probably one of them. But it was just, that's how I felt watching Iron Fist. I felt like the show was actively trying to kill me. And it was just taking everything that I loved and telling me that I wasn't allowed to have it. Ever.
Not for you, ever again.
I'm getting frustrated here just talking about it. I'm trying to, like, I can't focus my chi.
I'm just not feeling it.
I'm getting too frustrated. It's like I can't calm down enough to just sit back and say, okay, this is why it sucked. I want to just gripe over and over about the same scenes, and it's going to sound stupid if I do that, so let's move on.
Okay, let's move on.
So during the entire first season, there's another character. Remember the brother I mentioned with the running the company?
Yes.
Now his character, this entire show, is the only character, the only one that's getting any character development whatsoever. And I'm watching the show, and I'm like, is this who the show is really about? Because it's like he's going through a drug problem, and he's a really serious businessman, and he's really good at it, but he's got all these other side problems, and it turns out that the bad guy, who is his dad, that his sister thinks is dead, and he's hiding that fact from her because he thinks it'll hurt her somehow. I don't remember what the logic was, but he's a bad guy, and he doesn't want the sister to know that her dad is a bad guy. And so she thinks that he died. he was resurrected by the Hand, which is their thing. They resurrect people and bring them into their fold. But now he's like against the Hand, but he's still a villain. He wants to be his own villain and break away from them. So the brother is like, he doesn't know what to do about this guy because he's got such a stranglehold on the brother. So he's like killing people and having the brother hide the bodies and all this other stuff. And he's beating the crap out of the brother. And so the brother, you're looking at him at the beginning like he's the bad guy because he's the one that gets the Iron Fist committed to the mental hospital. So you're thinking, okay, this guy's going to be the main bad guy. Well, it turns out he's just got this horrible abusive relationship, and like he's got all these other problems, and like as the show goes on, you kind of start rooting for him. You're like, yeah, everyone hates him, and there's not that many reasons to like him, but he's actually actively protecting people a lot, and by the end of the show, not only did I start to feel that he was the real hero of the show, but and anyone that listens to these has to realize at this point that I don't care about spoilers, so Ramon, sorry if you haven't seen it. And, like, whoever accidentally happens across this, because nobody's going to listen to this. But, but like, the very end of the show, you finally get to see the Iron Fist fight.
Okay.
And it's like they ran all the way up until then before he finally gets his full power back and can use the Iron Fist. I mean, he doesn't use the Iron Fist for anything up until the end. And then he's fighting the bad guy in the most painful fight I think I've ever encountered.